Good morning. Well, I guess I'm going to tell another story about work, only this one was a story from the wire factory where I worked in Perth, in my hometown, Perth, Ontario, Canada. And I used to work 4 to midnight. I was in school during the day. I was in high school. This was I worked there from around 1983 to 1987. Anyway, um, this was a pretty rough place. Like, this was one of those old-fashioned factories where you literally were risking being seriously hurt or killed working there. And that wasn't unusual in those days. Factory work could be quite dangerous. Still can be quite dangerous, but in those days even more so. And we literally never had a day go by that somebody didn't get seriously hurt. Like, there was never a 24-hour period went by where nobody got hurt to the point where they had to go home. And it was that bad. It really was. I got seriously hurt there a couple of times, I remember, in the years I worked there, and I saw men getting hurt too. I saw guys being seriously hurt. Just before I got there, not long before I started to work there, a man had been killed in that factory. Apparently, he'd been cutting the bottom out of a barrel, and there was still some explosive stuff in the barrel. He'd been using a cutting torch to cut this bottom out of the barrel, and there was explosive stuff in the bottom of this steel drum he was cutting the bottom out of. Just some bunk left over from whatever chemical had been in there. We used to use some pretty serious chemicals in that factory. Whenever you're working with metal, you're using serious chemicals. Metal processing is it's a dangerous business, really. Even more so in those days. And anyway, he was cutting the bottom out of this barrel, and the bunk, what they call the little leftover stuff in the barrel, it exploded. And apparently what I was told is there were pieces of the guy everywhere. Like, they literally were scraping pieces of him off the walls and stuff. It was that bad. So this is how the place was anyway. Anyway, the story I'm going to tell is humorous. You wouldn't know it from the intro, but it is. And I've always had this sense of humor anyway, I guess, and especially in a tough situation. And it kind of united us as employees there because it was a tough place. But, we were kind of united in the fact that we were working this tough job. There's something about that unites people. And we were all men. The only women worked in the office, So we were all men there, and we were like guys that had been in combat almost together, the way we were. There was just a unity there amongst us. And so if you could make the other guys laugh, that was great in the face of a tough situation. And I have a sense of humor where I can do that anyway. In 1986, if you recall, Halley's Comet made its first appearance in 76 years. It only comes around every 76 years, so it's a once-in-a-lifetime event, really. Anyway, in 1986 was the year of Halley's Comet, and it was all over the news that Halley's Comet was flying past the Earth and all that. Well, I came in at 4 p.m. to begin my shift, and I'm walking along there, and we had a chalkboard on the wall in the factory, and the chalkboard, there were words on it that said, "This manufacturing facility has worked," and then there was a blank where you could write in with chalk how many days, and then it said, "days without a lost time injury," and it was always a 0. And the time I worked there, I only ever saw it that wasn't a 0 the one time, and this was the day. Bear that in mind, this was the day that I'm talking about. Well, I come along, and all the men are standing around looking up at this chalkboard, and they're almost like they're in awe of it. And what was there on the chalkboard? There was a big, beautiful 1. And they'd used colored chalk to draw the 1, and they'd taken they put rays going out of different colors from the 1 and stuff. So I stopped and I looked at it, and I just shook my head, and I just said, beats that Halley's Comet thing all to hell, doesn't it? And I turned around and walked away, and all I could hear was them roaring with laughter, That was one of the few moments in my life where I was truly cool, where I was like the cool guy in the group, Made them all laugh anyway, I remember that. I said, beats that Halley's Comet thing all to hell, doesn't it? Just like that, and walked away. Well, I mean, once every 76 years is a Halley's Comet year, where Halley's Comet flies past the Earth. And I don't know how many years we would have between a full 24-hour day with nobody getting hurt in that factory, but it wouldn't surprise me if it actually did beat the Halley's Comet thing all to hell, like I said. Anyway, that's just another thing I remember. Like I say, I for a few minutes there, I was just walking away with my head held high, And I could just hear them all laugh, and it was pretty nice. Anyway, that's it for now. Video size limit reached. Talk to you later.